A man rescued a helpless orphaned bear cub. He brought the lonely creature home, cared for it, and raised it with love. But 3 years later, something absolutely shocking unfolded. 30-year-old Marco followed his usual path home each evening, a route that ran alongside the forest. One evening, after working late until 7 o'clock, he found himself walking home in the dark. Suddenly, a peculiar noise from the bushes caught his attention, a plaintive, desperate squeak, as if something or someone was in distress. Curious and concerned, Marco approached the source of the sound. To his astonishment, he found a tiny bear cub huddled near an unfinished building. The cub looked like it had been born only recently, its tiny frame trembling with fear as it squealed loudly, calling for help. Marco hesitated, knowing the dangers of encountering a bear cub. Its protective mother could be nearby. He waited cautiously for several minutes, scanning the area for any sign of the mother bear. But she never appeared. It became clear to Marco that the cub had been abandoned, likely orphaned by hunters or illness. Compassion overwhelmed him as he realized the little creature was completely alone and vulnerable. Marco had a kind heart and knew he could not leave the tiny bear cub to its fate. He carefully picked up the cub and carried it home. The little furry creature immediately felt safe, stopped shivering, and quieted down in the cozy, warm jacket. When Marco brought the bear cub home, he immediately poured some warm milk into a bowl and stirred in a little sugar. He placed the bowl on the floor, and the bear cub immediately crawled towards it on all fours and began to greedily lap up the milk, as it was very hungry. It seemed that the cub had been without its mother for a long time, driven by desperation to leave the forest and head towards the city. Marco stroked the bear cub's soft fur and decided to keep it at home, realizing that the helpless cub would not survive alone in the wild. The man named his new, unusual pet Ozzy. The bear cub quickly adapted to his new home and kind owner. Marco had a dog named Zoe, a sweet mongrel with kind eyes. At first, Zoe was afraid of Ozzy when the man first brought him into the house and growled menacingly at the furry animal. But after a few days, the dog realized that Ozzy was just a tiny, defenseless cub in desperate need of maternal love and care. It only took a couple of weeks for the two pets to start happily running after each other in the yard near the house. So would run away, and Ozzy cheerfully hobbled after her on his small, amusing paws. Sometimes they would collide in a run, and then the bear cub would fall to the ground, quickly get up, and continue running as if nothing had happened. Every few hours, Marco fed Ozzy with milk from a bottle with a nipple. The bear cub greedily drank it all and even sucked the empty bottle, trying to squeeze out the last drops. Ozzy grew rapidly before their eyes, getting bigger and bigger each day. Soon, Marco had to buy not milk, but canned meat for adult dogs. Of course, Ozzy devoured it eagerly. The bear cub gradually transformed into a large and strong beast. When Ozzy was 3 months old, he was the size of a large dog. It was clearly getting cramped in the small house. Toys flew in all directions, and furniture toppled over from the running and playing of the pets. Marco understood that he would soon have to release the bear back into the forest where he found it. It was a very difficult decision because the man had grown very attached to Ozzy, as if he were his own. But he understood perfectly well that this would be better for the bear, who was destined to live in freedom, not in a small house. After another couple of weeks, Marco loaded the much-grown Ozzy into his car and drove him back into the forest, into the dense thickets, closer to the place where he once found the cub. On the way in the car, the bear cub was very anxious and crawled all over the seat, whining plaintively. The pet probably sensed that his owner was taking him somewhere far away. Finally, they arrived at a place where dense bushes grew along the edge of the forest. Marco pulled the heavy Ozzy out of the car and set him on the grass in a small clearing. Tears welled up in the man's eyes as he hugged his clumsy friend for the last time. Ozzy also seemed to understand everything and whined pitifully, not wanting to let go of the man's embrace. Then, Marco had to shout loudly, causing the bear cub to immediately turn around and run quickly into the forest, dropping fur, cones, and branches as he ran. Within a few seconds, he disappeared into the thickets, wagging his short tail. Marco watched his unusual pet for a long time, hoping that he could adapt and survive in the wild. 3 years had passed since the day Marco released Ozzy back into the forest. All this time, the man remembered his clumsy friend and missed him. They had been so close, and now Marco could only wonder what had become of Ozzy in the wild. The man hoped that his big, furry friend could handle everything on his own. One sunny evening, when Marco returned from work, he heard a strange noise from the backyard. Zoe, who had remained his faithful pet all these years, barked loudly and ran outside through the back door. Marco followed her to find out what was going on, as he wasn't expecting any guests today. Right near the house, next to the trash cans, stood a huge brown bear on its hind legs, staring intently at the man. Marco froze in horror, as bears had never gone that far into the city. The man tried not to move to avoid provoking aggression from the huge predator. However, this did not help, and the bear headed straight toward him. Marco almost screamed in horror, but at that moment he suddenly recognized his old friend Ozzy. The bear, who turned out to be the same funny little bear cub he had once picked up, had grown into a real formidable predator. Ozzy also recognized Marco. He made a joyful growl and approached his old friend closely. The man tensed, as he didn't know what to expect from the huge predator. However, Ozzy had no intention of harming the man. The beast carefully hugged the man with his mighty paws, just as he had done as a cub. Then, Ozzy gently nudged his muzzle into Marco's chest and began to lick his face with his large, rough tongue. Hearing this, Zoe barked even louder, but Marco quickly calmed her with a gentle gesture. The man soon realized the bear wasn't there to attack him. Instead, it had come to greet the kind friend who had once saved its life. Moved by the moment, Marco went to the refrigerator, gathered all the food suitable for the bear, and offered it to Ozzy. The bear happily devoured the meal, smacking its lips and licking every crumb. After half an hour, Ozzy had cleaned the plate, his grateful eyes meeting Marco's. In that moment, Marco didn't see a massive forest predator. He saw the little bear cub he had cared for, his old friend. With a nudge of his muzzle, Ozzy expressed his thanks, then turned and slowly lumbered back toward the forest. Marco and Zoe watched in awe as the bear disappeared into the trees. Though Marco never saw Ozzy again, the memory of their heartwarming reunion stayed with him forever, a reminder that his efforts to save and nurture the cub had made all the difference.